Today I want to talk about DJ Uiagalelei, Bryce Young, JT Daniels, and all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, I want to talk about DJ Uiagalelei, Bryce Young, and JT Daniels because one of the things that I was thinking about is how we could see all three of them in the college football playoff as soon as next year and how recruiting is just wild and cool that way. And I'm thinking about this because I wrote a piece for foxsports.com about DJ Uiagalelei, and I made a video over at CFB on Fox about DJ Uiagalelei, as he is going to be the starting quarterback for Clemson when they take on Notre Dame in South Bend tomorrow night. Also interesting to me, Uiagalelei, as well as, call him back in just a second, as well as Bryce Young and Ian Book and JT Daniels are all from the state of California, which, is fun for if you're a Californian, but also speaks to the kind of football that gets played in that state more often than not, right? It's really, really good, which is the reason why we always believe that USC should be really, really good, because you should just rope off really the Los Angeles metro area, like just LA County, and be able to field a national championship winning football team in the way that we talk about Texas just roping off the state of Texas, or Miami being able to rope off quite literally South Florida and be able to compete. We can say this about Georgia as well, because college football is so regional, but these players have gone all over the country, literally. Like JT Daniels and, to a degree, Bryce Young started at USC. JT Daniels comes after putting up like 67 touchdowns in like a season and leading modern day to a national championship to USC, plays a year, blows out his ACL, transfers to Georgia. Bryce Young commits to USC first, coming out of modern day, following JT Daniels, ends up actually flipping to Alabama, where he's backing up Mac Jones, who's having a Heisman Trophy winning caliber season. If he can run it all the way through, he could ascend to the top of the NFL draft rankings ahead of guys like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. And that's interesting because Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields were the number one and number two players, let alone the number one and number two quarterbacks in the 2018 class. And both of those guys have already played against each other in the college football playoff. So you can see how seeing all three of these guys in the playoff is really not as far-fetched as some people might think, especially through those first top 30 players that are ranked among ESPN rivals and 247 in the 247 Sports Composite. You got about a 1 in 3 hit rate about the guys that are going to go in the top first round of the, draft eligible year for them. So last year that would have been the 2017 class. This coming year it'll be the 2018 class. But I'm also interested in talking about this from the standpoint of how good college football players have become before they get to college, right? Uiagalelei comes out of St. John Bosco, where he owns a brick of records that I put in the article. There's a link in the description below if you're looking to read it, and I encourage you to. But the point is, like, he owns all these records, but these records were once held by Josh Rosen, right? A number of them. And while Rosen has not had the kind of NFL, reality that many of us wanted him to have, he was the best or one of the best quarterbacks in the state of California, let alone in that class of quarterbacks. And then when he got to UCLA, learning with Jim Mora, he had, this way about him that is, I'm smart, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm not smart. And he had this really outstanding game against Texas A&M that we all remember him for. But if you were looking at the 2018 draft, the one where Baker Mayfield goes number 1, Sam Darnold gets drafted, Josh Allen gets drafted, Lamar Jackson goes 32nd, very last pick to the Baltimore Ravens in the first round draft, and just the second unanimous MVP in the history of the league, the other being Tom Brady. We all thought that Josh Rosen would have been the best quarterback from a strictly, I'm a professional, I'm polished, I have the great mechanics and the great mind to be a good quarterback. I think that's how a lot of people feel about Bryce Young, is he has all the tools to be great. He doesn't have the size of Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence, but he has the size of a Kyler Murray although he does not have the athleticism, but that's not a knock because nobody is as athletic as Kyler friggin' Murray. It's just not possible. DJ Uiagalelei has a little bit of all of that, right? He's smart on a football field, but he's got a absolute hand cannon for an arm. It's like an OP last word in Destiny 1. It's like a Vex Mythoclast, right? Like just what you want when you're throwing darts and can explode into the chest of wide receivers. As a matter of fact, they put in a new rule at Clemson when he got there because Dabo Swinney saw how hard he was throwing the ball just effortlessly and said, you got to have him throwing to juniors and seniors. You can't have him just throwing to anybody. He's going to get somebody hurt because he threw that hard. And at 6'4", 253, he feels like a Josh Allen with the way that he's able to move around in the pocket and the way that he's able to make things happen. Like he had a 25-yard touchdown run against Boston College to go along with those 342 yards he threw for on 41 attempts, completing like 30 passes for 2 touchdowns. But then you look and you see JT Daniels, and that's the guy for which I want to see if he wins the job at Georgia. Still might have an opportunity to play this year, even as Stetson Bennett seems to be Kirby Smart's guy. How much further has he progressed or regressed as these other 2 quarterbacks, the class behind him, are, we think, going to be really good? We know about DJ, at least to a degree. We're going to wait and find out about Bryce, at least to a degree. But as I was thinking about doing this segment, that was what was really gnawing at me, as I'd stumbled across a topic that I know that you, who watch this channel, is very much into, not necessarily from like a national perspective, because I think nationally this weekend, we're all concerned about Clemson versus Notre Dame, Ian Book and Notre Dame, and what they might not be able to do because they have a history of losing these kinds of games. And if you can't beat Clemson when they're down Mike Jones, Tyler Davis, James Skalski, and Trevor Lawrence, and you're at home, can you actually ever beat Clemson? Like, that's the national story here. But as we look at the depth chart and we think about how good you have to be to play at the highest levels of college football, and you look at how all 3 of the quarterbacks, JT Daniels and Bryce Young and DJ Uiagalelei, have won national championships already, high school, you can see how like the best player from like your high school doesn't make the NFL or make a great college football team. You see how that guy ends up playing at like McPherson or Bethany or Bethel or Ottawa or Kansas Wesleyan, and the list goes on, right? You have to be this sort of demigod. You have to be this sort of guy that feels like he came off of Mount Olympus and has been blessed with all the talents and the tools that make his job look so much easier to perform than it should be. And I'm in the middle of reading about Henry Aaron and his contemporaries, and that's the thing that really strikes me about that story as well, getting back to how some of these quarterbacks are viewed. Henry Aaron is one of the greatest baseball players ever. He also played with contemporaries such as Roy Campanella, Shaggy Robinson, Don Newcomb, of course, Willie Mays, and the list goes on. And you can get lost in the scrum. But even if Henry Aaron can do that, like if he can get lost in the scrum, I'm amazed sometimes that more players don't get lost in the scrum, which is a long way of saying, Tulsa, OU, recruit the hell out of Braylin Presley, please. That dude was lighting people up on national television against Booker T. Washington Hornets, my Booker T. Washington Hornets that I love so much. He's the truth. Every Presley is elite. Deuces.